Milling Through History presents The Real Indiana Jones, Part 1. When we think about Indiana Jones, the immediate image that comes to mind is that of Harrison Ford. And even if we consider the character himself as a real human being, we think about how he is the embodiment of what a hero of the 1930s and 1940s would look like. And yet, when we think about the character, one has to imagine, what if there was somebody who was really just like Indiana Jones? Granted, he might not always be out there fighting the Nazis or even the communists all the time, but there has to have been somebody in history who would embody that which was and became Indiana Jones. And sure enough, there are a few historical individuals who can lay the claim that they are the inspiration behind the figure of Indiana Jones. One of the individuals who can make the strongest case for being the real-life Indiana Jones is that of Roy Chapman Andrews. Born January 26, 1884 in Beloit, Wisconsin, he would teach himself taxidermy and use the money to pay for college. His major, though, was not archaeology or history, but rather English. He would apply for a position at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City, saying that when he was applying, he would take any position that was available. And ironically enough, the only position they could offer him was that of janitor. Taking the job, he would work for the museum and study hard for a master's degree in mammalogy from Columbia University, working his way up into a much more notable position within the museum. In his earliest voyages of exploration, he would collect snakes and lizards and observe marine mammals. And he is credited for filming some of the best footage of seals found in the early 20th century. In 1920, he began an expedition to Mongolia, driving a fleet of cars from Peking across the country. And in 1922, would discover a fossil of a gigantic hornless rhinoceros. Now, one of the things that was rather unique is that he was a supporter of a theory known as the Out of Asia theory, which stated that the origins of humanity came from Asia rather than Africa, and that humanity would spread out from the Asian continent around the world. To prove this point, he would lead many expeditions throughout Central Asia in search of the earliest human remains. And although his primary mission of finding human remains failed, his expedition did discover the very first dinosaur nest with eggs in it, proving that dinosaurs were hatched from eggs itself. Now, he would continue to make expeditions to Asia throughout the 1920s, and in one expedition, Andrews would find himself battling numerous vipers as they attempted to get warm in his tent one night. While he was successful in beating back the snakes, he would develop a lifelong fear of the creatures. Does this sound like anyone we know? In 1927, he was made an honorary Boy Scout by the Boy Scouts of America, and in 1934 became the director of the American Museum of Natural History, retiring from the position in 1942. Now, after retiring, he would move to North Colebrook, Connecticut, and during his retirement years would write a number of books about his life and adventures. In 1958, he would move to Carmel Valley, California, where he passed away on March the 11th, 1960. And while some people have claimed that Andrews was the inspiration for Indiana Jones, one of the things is that the Smithsonian decided to look closely at the life of Roy Chapman Andrews and concluded that the character of Indiana Jones was combined with a numerous number of explorers, including Andrews, to create the figure. And yet, oddly enough, while all these different explorers that existed would create Indiana Jones, there is one figure who is rather unique and can lay an even greater claim to the title of being the real-life Indiana Jones. And we'll hear about him in our next episode of Milling Through History. For more information, please consider these suggested titles. Be sure to click on the left-hand side of the screen to subscribe to our show, and on the right-hand side for our latest episode. And we will see you again for the next episode of Milling Through History.